When a man is truly taken by you, when his interest goes deeper than surface attraction, and he starts to emotionally invest, something fascinating happens. He begins to mirror you, not because he's calculating it, not because he's been coached to, but because his brain is hardwired to do it. Mirroring is one of those psychological cues we often overlook, yet it's one of the most powerful, instinctive behaviors that reveals emotional attachment. Picture this. You're sitting across from him at a coffee shop. You reach for your drink with your right hand. A few moments later, he scratches his chin with his right hand. You tilt your head slightly when listening to something funny, and a few seconds later, his posture shifts in a similar way. You might not even notice it unless you're really looking, but it's happening. These micro-actions, these subtle mimicries, are his mind trying to say, "I'm connected to you." It's how we as humans show empathy and desire connection without even realizing it. This kind of mirroring behavior is often a reflection of deep emotional rapport. It's not just about copying how you sit or the words you use, it's about syncing with your energy. If you're excited, he becomes more animated. If you speak softly and slow down, his tone adjusts. That synchronization is his emotional radar zeroing in on you. It's the non-verbal way of saying, "I'm here with you, I'm feeling what you feel." But mirroring doesn't stop with physical gestures, it extends to verbal patterns too. You might notice him picking up your slang. Maybe you use certain phrases or quirky expressions, and over time they creep into his vocabulary. That's not him trying to be cute, although it might come off that way. That's him trying to feel close. When someone is enamored with you, they don't just want to see you often, they want to feel like they understand you, and one of the easiest paths to that is through the language you use. It's like emotional tuning. Think of two musical instruments being played in the same room. Over time, they start to harmonize with each other. The strings vibrate in alignment. That's what mirroring looks like in a human connection. His body and language are aligning with yours because he's emotionally resonating with you. It's his subconscious trying to close the gap between you and me into us. Even more interestingly, mirroring isn't just a passive indicator. It's also a way he builds intimacy. It creates a feedback loop. The more he mirrors you, the more you feel comfortable and understood. Your brain interprets the mirroring as a sign that this person is safe, attentive, and emotionally aligned. You relax more around him. And guess what? That makes him feel even more drawn to you. It's subtle, but it's powerful, like a dance neither of you rehearsed, but somehow moved perfectly together in. Another layer to this is emotional mirroring. If you're excited about something, really lit up with joy or passion, and he matches that excitement not out of obligation, but because he genuinely gets caught up in your enthusiasm, that's emotional mirroring. When a man is crazy about you, he doesn't just mirror your gestures, he mirrors your states. Your moods influence his. Your joy lights him up. Your sadness makes him lean in. That's someone who's no longer just looking at you, they're feeling with you. You may also notice that when you're passionate about something, your career, a hobby, a cause, you speak with a certain rhythm and spark. A guy who's into you, he doesn't just listen, he starts to speak at the same pace. He nods with you, leans forward when you do, finishes your sentences, not in a way that interrupts, but like he's emotionally right there beside you. That's his way of showing, "I get you, I'm in this with you." Now let's talk about proximity. Mirroring isn't just visual, it's spatial too. He'll start to align his body orientation toward you. Even in a group setting, his feet will point in your direction. He'll lean in when you speak. If you shift closer, he shifts too. These adjustments happen without conscious effort, but they're loud signals. Our brains tell us to face what we desire. And when he's emotionally locked in on you, everything in his body language will point your way, literally. The fascinating thing is, men don't often verbalize these changes. You won't hear, "Hey, I've been copying your body language lately because I think I'm emotionally connected to you." No one says that, but you'll see it in how he fidgets when you do, how his laughter starts to sound more like yours, how his energy dips or rises with yours. It's a silent kind of confession. His body reveals what his words might still be afraid to say. Sometimes this mirroring can even extend into routines. You might talk about your morning routine, your favorite workout, the podcast you love, and days later he's trying it out. he's not just doing it to impress you, he's trying to step into your world. He's trying to live a piece of your life, because that brings him closer to you. When a man is crazy about a woman, he wants to experience the things that make her who she is. That's how he builds a deeper bond, even if he never outright says that's what he's doing. It's easy to write off mirroring as coincidence, but pay attention, true emotional connection leaves traces, and the man who's all in on you isn't going to wait until he's ready to say, "I'm falling for you," to show it. He's going to communicate it in the small, barely noticeable moments, the way he subtly aligns his breath with yours when you're sitting close, the way his posture softens when you speak, the way he reflects your vibe without even trying. And that's the beauty of it, because it's not about performance, it's not about conscious tactics, it's about raw, instinctive human connection. When a man is emotionally pulled toward you, he stops operating in a separate rhythm and starts moving in time with yours. That's not just attraction, that's alignment. When a man is truly crazy about a woman, he doesn't always come right out and say it. He often masks his vulnerability behind subtle behaviors that let him feel things out before revealing too much. One of the clearest psychological signs of this emotional intensity is when he starts to test your interest back. Now, this isn't about manipulation or playing games, it's about protection. When a man has real feelings, when he's emotionally invested, his ego and heart are on the line. He may not even realize it, but these tests are his way of asking, "Am I safe to fall deeper?" You might notice this in small moments. He'll say something ambiguous, something lightly teasing, and watch how you respond. Maybe he jokes about being a terrible texter and then goes silent for a day, just to see if you'll notice. Or he might say, "You must have a bunch of guys chasing you," and then pause, waiting for your reaction. That's not casual flirting, that's observation. He's studying how much you'll reveal. Do you get defensive? Do you reassure him? Do you lean in or back away? He's not looking for a specific answer, he's reading your energy, your openness, your emotional availability. When a guy is falling for you, his biggest fear isn't rejection, it's one-sided connection. He's afraid of investing deeply while you're keeping it casual. So he creates small emotional scenarios to see where you stand. He won't say, "I want you to confirm you like me." Instead, he'll invite that confirmation in indirect ways. He wants to see if you'll meet him halfway. That's why he may suddenly become unpredictable. Not because he's losing interest, but because he's checking if yours is real. There's a reason these behaviors can feel confusing. They're subtle. He might go from being warm and attentive one day to slightly distant the next. But this isn't emotional immaturity, it's emotional testing. Think about it. When you're truly drawn to someone, you crave validation, not in a needy way, but in a way that says, "Can I trust? Is this safe?" For many men, especially those who don't know how to express vulnerability outright, these little experiments are the only way they know how to seek assurance. It might come out in competitive jokes or hypothetical scenarios. He might ask, "Would you date someone like me?" with a smirk, or mention an ex in passing, just to gauge your reaction. He's not talking about those things because he's stuck in the past, he's measuring your emotional investment. If you get jealous, he notices. If you stay distant, he notices. He's picking up on cues, because when a guy's falling hard, he becomes hypersensitive to your signals. Now here's what's important. How you respond in these moments matters. If you respond with insecurity or overreaction, he might retreat. If you ignore him completely, he may assume you're not into him. But if you answer with calm, light confidence, you pass the test. You show him that you're emotionally stable and comfortable, which is incredibly attractive. When you respond with certainty, it gives him the permission to feel safe, safe enough to let down his guard. This testing phase is like walking on a psychological tightrope. He's leaning forward emotionally but pulling back behaviorally, just to see if you'll follow. It's not a trick, it's vulnerability disguised as curiosity. He's not trying to confuse you, he's trying to avoid being hurt. And this can be even more pronounced in men who have been burned in the past. If he's had his heart broken before, he'll be even more cautious, even more attuned to how much you reciprocate. Every time you show care, openness, and emotional maturity, you ease his inner conflict. Sometimes these tests take the form of banter with a purpose. He'll push a little, challenge your opinions, playfully disagree, not to belittle you, but to see how secure you are in yourself. A guy who really likes you doesn't want someone who agrees with him just to please him. He wants to know he can emotionally spar with you, that you can hold your own. That kind of dynamic excites a man because it promises depth, not just surface-level interaction. You may also find that he checks how you respond to his moments of vulnerability. He might tell you something personal but not too deep, like a stressful day at work or a childhood memory, and then closely watch how you respond. Do you brush it off? Do you ask more questions? Do you change the subject? These are all little clues he collects. He's thinking, can she hold space for me emotionally? Will she accept this deeper version of me? The more receptive and present you are, the more he feels safe to share more. Sometimes he might do what looks like pulling away. He becomes less responsive, slightly colder, or cancels plans suddenly. This withdrawal isn't because he's lost interest, it's often a psychological reflex. It's him creating distance to see if you'll close the gap. Not out of manipulation, but because he's afraid of being too forward. He wants to know, will she notice I'm gone? Will she reach out, or am I the only one leaning in? These moments can be confusing, but they're filled with emotional data. He's not trying to vanish, he's trying to understand where he stands. The key to navigating this phase is your own emotional clarity. When a man tests your interest, he's essentially saying, I want to trust you, but I need to see if it's safe. If you can respond with kindness but certainty, curiosity without anxiety, affection without pressure, you provide the emotional foundation he's hoping for. You become the place where he can relax into his feelings instead of constantly analyzing them. You don't need to chase or prove anything. What a man who's falling for you truly wants is reassurance without dependency. He wants to feel you're in this, but that your presence is coming from a genuine place, not obligation or insecurity. So when he throws out these small tests, it's your steadiness, your warmth, and your confidence that pass them. He doesn't need grand declarations, he needs real moments. Your ability to stay composed, engaged, and honest becomes the very thing that deepens his emotional bond with you. Because when a man is truly crazy about you, he doesn't want just any kind of woman. He wants the one who can meet him at his depth. And before he dives in, he just wants to know, will she dive too? When a man starts falling deeply for a woman, one of the strongest impulses he has is to elevate himself in her eyes, not through empty words or shallow gestures, but by showing up as the best version of himself. This doesn't mean he becomes fake or puts on a performance. It means he becomes deeply motivated to prove his value in subtle, psychological ways that reflect his desire to be seen as someone worth choosing. When a man is crazy about you, he begins to showcase not just who he is, but who he is becoming. It's not about impressing you for the sake of ego, it's about aligning with you in a way that feels worthy of your attention, admiration, and respect. You'll notice this change in little behaviors that are easy to dismiss, unless you're really paying attention. Maybe he starts talking about his goals more. Maybe he suddenly cares about his fitness, his routine, his discipline. Maybe the guy who used to stay up late playing video games is now waking up early to go to the gym. That shift isn't random. It's not because he suddenly discovered some new version of self-help on his own, it's because you entered his world, and now he wants to rise. He's looking at his life and asking, am I the kind of man she would choose, not just today, but over time? It's not just about external change. Internally, he starts becoming more aware of his decisions, his behavior, and even his emotional maturity. If he's used to avoiding responsibility or brushing things off, you'll see him slowly start to show more accountability. He might become more reliable, more thoughtful, more forward-thinking. He's building a version of himself that feels solid, stable, and strong, because deep down, he believes that a woman like you deserves nothing less than that. And what's fascinating is, most men don't even realize they're doing it at first. It's subconscious. It starts with admiration. He sees you as someone he respects, not just physically attractive, but emotionally intelligent, purposeful, someone with standards. That admiration sparks a need to grow, to sharpen himself, to bring more to the table. He wants you to see that being with him isn't just exciting, it's an asset, a win, a choice that will make your life better, not more complicated. You might notice how he starts to become more intentional with his time. Instead of just talking about his dreams, he begins acting on them. Instead of scrolling through social media in his free time, he starts working on a side project or taking care of responsibilities he used to ignore. And while part of that may be for his own growth, there's another layer. It's that quiet thought in the back of his mind that says, "She's watching, and I want her to be proud of me." This isn't about pretending to be perfect. In fact, it's often the opposite. When a man is emotionally invested, he doesn't try to act flawless. He tries to show you his progress. He'll open up about the challenges he's facing, and not just to complain. He wants you to see that he's working through them, that he's someone who doesn't run when things get tough. He wants to be the man who can face hard things and still stand tall. Because he knows that kind of strength matters to a woman who's emotionally mature. In conversations, you'll see this desire to elevate himself come through in how he frames his life. He doesn't just tell stories for entertainment. He shares things to give you insight into who he is. He wants you to see how he thinks, how he handles stress, how he leads or supports others. And it's not always grand or dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as how he talks about a conflict at work, how he handles a rude waiter, or how he treats his family. These are the places where his character speaks without needing explanation. You may also find that he becomes more generous, not just with money or gifts, but with his time, energy, and attention. He wants to contribute something valuable to your life. He might offer advice on something you're struggling with, go out of his way to help you with a task, or show interest in your world, even if it's unfamiliar to him. That willingness to step into your life to understand your goals, passions, and fears, that's him saying, "I'm not here just to take from you, I want to add to your life." It's not uncommon to see a man shift from passivity to leadership when he's smitten. He starts taking initiative, not just to plan dates, but to make decisions, to protect your time, to be reliable. He wants you to feel that you're in good hands, not because he's controlling, but because he's committed. He's trying to show you that being with him won't be chaos, it will be clarity. He wants you to see that he's not just someone who feels deeply, he acts deeply. His affection isn't just emotional, it's practical. There's also a kind of emotional discipline that shows up when a man is trying to earn a place in your life. He becomes more patient. He doesn't rush you, pressure you, or demand constant attention. Why? Because he understands your value. He knows you're not going to be impressed by insecurity or impulsiveness. So he shows restraint, not as a tactic, but as a natural result of respecting you. He's trying to show that he's not just emotionally reactive, he's emotionally steady. Even in how he carries himself around others, the shift is noticeable. He might become more intentional about how he's perceived, not in a superficial way but in a values-driven way. He wants to be respected because he knows that being respected by others makes him more trustworthy in your eyes. Whether it's how he interacts with his peers or how he talks about his work, he begins presenting himself in a way that says, "I have integrity, I have direction, I have purpose." All of this might look effortless from the outside, but it's driven by something powerful on the inside: desire, admiration, and a deep longing to be the man you're proud to be with. And it's not because you asked him to change, it's because your presence inspired. That's the psychological impact of a strong woman who knows her worth. She doesn't demand elevation, she invites it by simply being herself. And the man who's truly crazy about her, he rises, not out of pressure but out of passion. Because when a man sees you as a woman of depth, value, and purpose, he doesn't want to be left behind. He wants to grow beside you. He wants to become for you, not to prove something to you, but to match the greatness he sees in you. When a man is emotionally captivated by a woman, one of the most telling signs is how closely he pays attention to the little things she says. These aren't the grand gestures that everyone sees or the obvious compliments he gives to win you over. These are the subtle, almost invisible details that most people would forget, but he doesn't. He locks them away, treasures them, and recalls them at the most unexpected moment. This isn't just about having a good memory. This is emotional investment showing up in real time. When a man remembers the smallest details about you, it's because his mind is constantly tuned to your frequency. He's listening, not just hearing. You might casually mention how your favorite flower is lavender, something you said in passing during a conversation that had nothing to do with gifts or preferences. Weeks later, you'll find a lavender-scented candle on your desk, or he'll surprise you with a small bunch after a long day. That moment is loaded with meaning, not because of the object, but because it says, "I was listening even when you didn't think it mattered." That's how emotional connection works. It shows up in what he chooses to remember, because remembering is a form of care. This kind of attentive memory doesn't require drama or spotlight. In fact, it's usually quiet and unnoticed by anyone but you. He might recall your order at a restaurant even though you've only eaten there once. He might remind you of a deadline you mentioned when you were stressed a week ago. Or he'll bring up the name of a friend you talked about, ask how they're doing and show interest, not because he knows them but because you do. Your world becomes important to him, not out of obligation, but out of emotional curiosity. He wants to know you deeply, and the details are where that depth begins. What's even more revealing is when he brings these things up in moments where he has nothing to gain. He's not trying to impress you in front of others, or score points. He's just naturally weaving these pieces of you into conversation. He'll say things like, "Didn't you mention you don't like spicy food?" Or "Wasn't this the song you said reminds you of high school?" These aren't rehearsed lines, they're spontaneous recollection. They live in his mind, because you live in his mind. When a man remembers your stories, your quirks, your little habits, it's because he's replaying your presence even when you're not around. Sometimes it's not even what you say, but how you feel when you say it. He remembers the way your voice softened when you talked about your grandmother. He notices that you always smile when you talk about your dog. He might not mention it right away, but he stores it. Emotional memory isn't just facts, it's feeling. When he's emotionally invested, he remembers your moods, your vulnerabilities, your laugh when it's real and when it's forced. He picks up on those shifts, because he's not observing from a distance, he's emotionally intertwined in your narrative. Men who care deeply often express it through quiet observation. They know that remembering the small things earns trust in a way that no amount of flattery ever could. When a man really listens, truly listens, he doesn't just process your words, he studies. He connects them to other parts of you. He creates an emotional map in his mind, and the more he learns, the more he values. He understands that the details aren't random, they're clues to who you are. And because he's serious about you, he's serious about understanding you. This is also where emotional intelligence begins to shine. A man who remembers the little things knows when to use that knowledge. He won't remind you of a painful moment when you're already feeling low. Instead, he'll shift the energy, maybe reference something that made you laugh before. He knows how to read the room, and part of that comes from remembering what makes you feel safe, happy, or understood. He might know which side of the bed you prefer, or that you need silence after a long day. These details seem small, but they're incredibly intimate, because they show that he's not guessing, he's paying attention. Even in conflict, this memory shows up. He doesn't fight dirty by using your past against you. Instead, he recalls how you prefer to communicate, what makes you shut down, and what helps you open up. That sensitivity is rooted in memory, and memory, when guided by care, becomes emotional safety. When a man shows you that he remembers how to handle your heart, you start to feel protected in a way that doesn't come from words, it comes from behavior. You'll also find that a man who remembers the little things is often very intentional with how he gives. He doesn't just buy gifts, he tailors them. He doesn't just plan dates, he personalizes them. Maybe he takes you to a restaurant you mentioned 6 months ago. Maybe he surprises you with a playlist of songs from your favorite artist, even though you only said their name once in a conversation. Those moments aren't random, they're designed from memory, which means they're designed from love. This behavior often confuses people because it's not flashy, it's not what romantic comedies put on screen, but it's real, it's steady. It's the kind of connection that builds trust slowly and deeply. When a man shows you that he remembers things no one else does, he's separating you from the rest of the world. He's saying, "I don't just see you, I notice you," and that's a powerful emotional signal. It means you're not just a passing thought, you're a priority. And the truth is, men who are crazy about a woman don't want to forget, they like remembering. They replay conversations in their head. They think about your preferences, your tone, your stories, not to analyze them, but because they're meaningful. You've become part of their internal world, and when that happens, remembering becomes instinct. It's no longer an effort, it's a desire. They carry your voice with them, even in silence. They remember, not because they're trying to win you over, but because they already feel like you've become part of their story. When a man is truly into you, when his feelings start to move from casual interest to emotional depth, he begins to show up in a way that's both consistent and respectful of your space. This is one of the most subtle, yet powerful psychological indicators of real interest. He won't bombard you with constant messages or overwhelm you with his presence, but he also won't disappear. He manages to walk that delicate line between being attentive and giving you room to breathe, and that balance isn't accidental, it's intentional. It's his way of saying, "I respect your individuality, but I want to be here, I'm not going anywhere." This behavior isn't loud or dramatic. It often shows up in simple, understated ways. Maybe he doesn't text you 100 times a day, but when he does, his message has thought and presence. He doesn't fill the space with meaningless noise, he fills it with meaning. Maybe he doesn't chase you around like someone with no direction, but you always feel his presence. Even when he's not physically there, he's the guy who remembers to check in before a big meeting. The one who notices when your energy shifts and asks how you're really doing. He's not performing, he's just steady, grounded, reliable. A man who's emotionally invested doesn't need to dominate your time to feel connected. In fact, he understands that real connection isn't built through control or pressure, it's built through trust and mutual presence. That's why he lets the relationship breathe. He doesn't panic when there's space. He doesn't interpret your silence as rejection. Instead, he uses that space to build something healthier: respect, independence, balance, and in doing so, he creates a relationship that doesn't suffocate you, it supports you. This is especially powerful because so many women have experienced the opposite. They've dealt with men who start off hot and then go cold, men who chase hard in the beginning, only to vanish as soon as it gets real, or men who try to claim their time and energy without offering any emotional maturity in return. But when a man gives you space and stays consistent, it sends a very different message. It says, I want you in my life, but I don't need to control you to feel secure. I trust the bond we're building, and trust is the key word here. A man who's really into you will demonstrate trust, not just in you but in the process. He won't rush the connection, he won't demand instant commitment. Instead, he'll show you that he's willing to invest, one step at a time. He'll match your pace, he'll tune into your needs. And that creates emotional safety, the kind that makes you want to lean in, not pull away. This balance also shows up in how he handles your independence. He's not threatened by your ambition, your schedule, your time with friends or family. In fact, he supports it. He might ask about your goals, offer encouragement, or simply give you the space to pursue the things that matter to you. That's not distance, that's maturity. A man who's secure in how he feels about you doesn't need to own every moment of your attention. He just wants to be a part of your life in a way that lifts you up instead of weighing you down. What's interesting is that this kind of consistency doesn't always look flashy. You might not get a big romantic gesture every day, but you'll get something far more meaningful. You'll get a man who shows up, who follows through on his words, who remembers the little things, who doesn't make you question where you stand. And most importantly, you'll feel a sense of emotional stability. That quiet feeling that says, I don't need to be anyone else around him, I don't need to perform, I'm enough just as I am. And this consistency over time becomes a foundation. It makes the relationship feel like something you can build on, not something that could fall apart at any moment. That's what a man is doing when he gives you space while staying close. He's giving you emotional room, while anchoring himself as someone you can rely on. Even when he's not physically present, his energy is there. In his words, his actions, the way he remembers to wish you luck before something big, or the way he checks in after a hard day, he becomes the calm in the chaos, not because he's trying to be perfect, but because he's grounded in how he feels about you. This kind of presence without pressure is rare, and it's especially important because it creates space for you to step into. A man who respects your pace, invites you to match his, instead of dragging you into something you're not ready for. And when you do start to show interest, when you initiate or open up, he sees it for what it is, a signal that trust is being built, that the connection is mutual, that the space he gave you was not wasted, it was what allowed the bond to grow stronger. You'll also notice that this man doesn't play games with silence. He's not pulling away to manipulate you into chasing him. He's not being distant to seem mysterious. His quiet moments aren't a strategy, they're just life. Maybe he's working, maybe he's resting. But when he comes back fully, he reconnects without excuses, and that kind of rhythm builds a very important message. You don't need to fear his silence. You don't need to question his pauses, because he always returns with intention. And that's what makes this type of connection so powerful. It's not built on urgency or obsession, it's built on intention. Every message, every gesture, every interaction comes from a place of thought and care, not from a fear of losing you, but from a desire to show up in a way that makes you feel valued, respected, and emotionally safe. He may not say I love you on the first date, he might not flood you with constant compliments, but over time you'll realize he's always there. When you need support, he offers it. When you pull away, he doesn't punish you. When you lean in, he leans in too. And that balance, that ability to give you space while still being emotionally present, that's the behavior of someone who isn't just caught up in temporary attraction. It's someone who's emotionally invested in something real. A man like this doesn't need to shout his feelings. He communicates them with presence, with patience, with steady effort. He understands that connection isn't forced, it's nurtured. And when a man shows up in your life this way, with that rare combination of space and consistency, what he's really doing is proving that he doesn't just want your attention, he wants your trust, your peace, your authentic self, and he's willing to give you the room to grow, while being the one who never drifts too far. When a man is truly crazy about you, he won't always express it in big, obvious declarations. Instead, he'll reveal it through subtle psychological shifts, mirroring your energy to build connection, testing your interest to feel safe, elevating himself to be worthy of your time, remembering the tiniest details that matter to you, and finding the balance between presence and space to let the relationship breathe. These behaviors aren't random, they're rooted in emotional investment. When you start to recognize these signs, you'll see that real affection doesn't always shout, it shows up quietly, consistently, and meaningfully, and that's when you know it's not just attraction, it's depth, it's intention, it's the beginning of something real.